Everyone, my name is Mrs. Bransfield and I'm the new reading teacher at Jeffrey School. I'm so excited to see you. This is my boy Charlie, my yellow lab Charlie, and I love to read in my rocking chair with him. He likes to snuggle. We'll see how this goes because it's almost dinner time. So I'm going to be reading chapter 5. It's called A Special Visit. Daisy could hear someone talking outside her pen. It was a quiet voice, speaking slowly. Some of the people here had tried to talk to her before. They'd sat in her pen and tried to coax her to come out and see them. She never did. She came out for food and ate it as fast as she could, but that was all. Once the lights were off and the staff had left, she crept out and snuggled on top of her bed. But at the slightest noise, another dog barking or even just shifting in its sleep, she would be right back underneath. Whoever was talking now hadn't tried to come into her space. She liked that. They stopped every now and then, the sounds stumbling out. It made the noise seem gentle, and she liked that too. It was hard to hear, though, underneath her bed. Very slowly, she edged forward so that her nose stuck out. The boy's reading was clearer now, but then he stopped talking, and she whisked back to the safe darkness under the bed. Slowly, quietly, he started again, and Daisy wriggled out, inch by inch. Except for the quiet, halting voice, the dog section of the rescue was almost silent. No one was barking. Daisy let her ears flop down, and she rested her muzzle gently on her paws. The fear that had been building up inside her for days eased just a little, and her eyes half closed as Jack went on. Jack didn't tell Maddie what had happened. He still wasn't sure he believed it, anyway. It could have been a coincidence that Daisy happened to decide to come out of her hiding place just then. But he really, really hoped not. If he was actually helping, he had to go there again. Maddie wasn't going to be at the rescue for the next couple of days. She had shifts at the supermarket, but she always fit in helping on the weekend, and he was going to go with her. Are you sure? Maddie eyed him sleepily at breakfast on Saturday morning. You know I'm going now, before I have to go to work. As in, you'd better be dressed in 3 minutes if you really want to come. Jack didn't need to think about it. He dashed upstairs and threw on some clothes. He was back in the kitchen before Maddie had gotten halfway through her cereal. Is that okay, Maddie? Mom asked, stirring her tea. Jack won't be in your way? I'm helpful, Jack pointed out, feeling annoyed. I put the food out for the dogs, and on Wednesday, he trailed off. He'd forgotten he wasn't going to tell anyone about Daisy. On Wednesday what? Mom asked. On Wednesday, I did my homework at the rescue, and I finished my book, Jack went on hurriedly. Oh, Jack, that's wonderful, his mom shook her head. Why didn't you tell me? I've got another one, Jack sighed. It's a nonfiction book about sharks, but it looks okay, I guess. He stuck the book in the pocket of his coat when he set off with Maddie. He wanted to see if Daisy would listen to him reading again. If she came out from under the basket today, it would be like a scientific experiment where you did the same thing again to make sure you got the same results twice. He'd been a little worried that there would be a lot of visitors looking at the dogs because it was a weekend. He didn't want a bunch of strangers hearing him read. But when he asked, Maddie explained that they tried to encourage people to look at the dogs online first. It's upsetting for the dogs sometimes having a lot of people walking up and down and pointing at them, she told him as they hung up their coats. If they look at the dogs online, we can bring the ones they want to meet to the visitors' room so they can get to know them. Susan and Adrian and Maddie were busy showing dogs and cats to people hoping to adopt. And whenever they had a spare minute, they were figuring out a plan for a fundraising event at the shopping center close to Jack's school. So no one noticed that when Jack finished washing up dogs' water bowls, he hurried to Daisy's pen. Her tail was sticking out again, but he was sure the lump under the dog bed looked bigger. She was growing. I've got a new book, he explained, waving it at the wire front of the pen. You probably don't know what sharks are, but they're interesting. They've been around for hundreds of millions of years. I never knew that until I got this book. He settled down next to the pen and opened up a page about great whites. He started to read, glancing sideways, hoping every so often to see if Daisy was listening. It took a little while, but by the time Jack was reading about shark attacks, there were only between 5 and 10 attacks on humans every year, which he was surprised about. Daisy had poked her head out from under the bed to listen. When he had read the last of the photo captions on that page, Jack risked looking over at her. "Hey," he whispered. The puppy was peering at him. With her nose, whoops, by Charlie, with her nose resting on her paws, when he spoke to her, he was sure he saw the dog bed bounce a little. Was she actually wagging her tail? He didn't want to scare her, so he quickly went back to reading out loud. When Jack got to the end of the page, Daisy was sitting by the wire, watching him. "Are you sure?" Amara asked, looking up at Jack as he leaned over the fence between their yards. I think I'm sure. She didn't come out for Maddie or any of the staff at the rescue. I think she likes being read to. We're going over to the rescue in a minute, so do you want to come and see if she'll do it for you too? Maddie won't mind, and Susan will be okay with it if we bring a note from your mom. We can help Maddie wash bowls or do something else useful first." Amara nodded. "I'll go and see if it's okay." She raced off and was back in a couple of minutes. She said yes. Should I climb over the fence? Both yards had benches in just the right place to make it easy to do. "Mom, I'm going now." She hopped up onto the back of the bench and swung one leg over. "I'll tell Maddie." Jack dashed into the house. "Amara wants to come too?" Maddie stared at him in surprise when he explained. "Why?" "Because I told her all about Daisy and she wants to see her. We'll both help." Okay, but you have to be careful," Maddie said, smiling at Amara as she came in through the back door. "Daisy's so shy, Amara. You can't scare her. Though actually, I noticed she was a little braver yesterday when I brought her dinner in. She looked at me. I know that doesn't sound like much, but it is." Jack exchanged a hopeful glance with Amara. It really sounded as if his reading was making Daisy feel better. At the rescue, Susan let him help groom 2 long-haired cats and play with black and white kittens that Jack had seen before. After that, though, they managed to hurry to Daisy's pen before someone could give them another job to do. The puppy was curled up on her side, but only half tucked under her bed this time, as though she wanted to be close enough to dart back underneath, just in case. She watched cautiously as Jack and Amara approached her. Then, instead of hiding, she wriggled up onto her paws and came to stand by the wire. "She never did that before," Jack whispered. "You better read to her," Amara breathed. "She almost looks like she's waiting for you to start." Jack sat on the floor and started to read the page in his book about sawfish. A couple of sentences in, Daisy sat down by the wire front of the pen and yawned. "She definitely likes it," Amara whispered, and Jack nodded to her. It was almost relaxing, reading with Daisy listening. He'd been worried that Amara being there would make him feel awkward. But Amara was more interested in dogs than she was in him. When he got to the end of the page, she waved a hand at him. "The others are listening too, did you know?" Jack glanced around at the rest of the pens. Dogs were all very quiet. Even Pug, who had the pen 2 down from Daisy, wasn't barking and whining the way he usually did. Jack held the book out to Amara. "Here," he whispered. "You try. Read some of it to Pug. Usually he's yapping all the time." Okay. Amara took the book and sat down in front of Pug's pen. Jack could hear him panting as he came to the wire front to see what was going on. Then he started to bark. Amara looked anxiously at Jack. "Am I making him upset?" "No, he barks a lot, honestly." "Read to him. Let's see." Amara started reading, talking nervously over Pug's barks at first, but then slowing down as she began to relax. Pug seemed to relax too. He stopped yapping and then he slumped down to the floor of the pen and started to chew on a rubber bone as he listened. It really does work, Jack said, looking around. Pug was chewing. Daisy had gone to lie down, but on top of her bed this time. Bandit, the big collie mix, was slumped on the floor of his pen, looking half asleep. Amara nodded. They loved it. Thanks for reading with me today, friends.